In my last video in this series, I started creating this black Jaguar painting. I worked on the Jaguar and I created this really cool, mystical looking jungle. Now I just need to get this painting to look like this one and this one. I'm going to use this video to share with you some of my best tips for painting realistic looking fur, and you might get a bonus tip from Amber as well. Amber's actually in my studio as well today.
Hi.
So I'll show you what she's working on a little bit later on. For the start of this stage of the process, I'm using just thin washes of paint. I'm doing this to just block in some basic colours to give myself an idea for later down the line, and also to add a little bit more colour and to saturate those blacks that I've already put down on the Jaguar. I don't really want solid black on this Jaguar, I want little subtle bits of colour hidden within all of this black fur. Before I start painting the fur, I like to get the eyes of whatever animal I'm working with to a nearly finished point. I like to see the soul of that animal and a little bit of emotion in the piece before I start working on any of the details around it. If you can get those eyes right in the beginning, then you can capture the life of the animal right from the get-go. Right, I think it might be time for a break. So, what do you think about lunch, Amber?
Yes, please.
I'll show you what she's been working on as well. Have a look. Bring you with me. So, as you can see, Amber is also painting a black Jaguar. Hers is a little bit more finished than mine. For some reason, we always just end up painting the same subject. It happens a lot more than you think it would. Well, this one's looking so good. I hope mine looks this good. Anyway, let's go get some lunch. After a very quick lunch, we are both back in the studio and it's time to start on the fur of the face. It would be nice if I could get all of the face done today, and this is where I'm going to share some of the tips for painting fur that I wish I knew when I was starting out in my painting journey. So my first tip sounds really simple. It's don't keep things too uniform. It sounds really easy to do, but I've seen, and I mean I'm guilty of this as well, lots of people just doing lots of fur strokes with the same size brush, going in exactly the same direction, and it looks like that fur has just been brushed with a comb. And it's not like that in real life. Fur is wavy, some are shorter, some are longer, some are thicker, some go off left, some go off right, some curl. Each animal is different. And I don't mean just each individual species of animal, I mean animals of the same species. They could have just been lying down, all of their fur is brushed in one direction, and some of that fur is brushed in another direction. They could have just been in a fight, or they could have just been cleaning themselves. If you're aiming for realism, or you're aiming for life in your painting, it's those little details that make the painting come alive, and make the fur look realistic, fluffy fur that you could actually reach out and touch and feel, rather than doing everything in just the same exact way. I can just do this because of muscle memory now. I can add in these sort of variations in the fur where I think they should go, and I don't need to rely too heavily on the reference photo. That's because when I started out and when I started to realise this kind of fur looked better, I started to look at loads and loads of different photos of different animals to see all that fur and how that fur actually looks, rather than what I just think it looks like. Then from research and little studies and then applying that to my bigger paintings, I've learned how to create relatively realistic looking fur. But I'm always looking for new ways to adapt and improve my approach. It's now day 2 painting this Jaguar. Well, like, day 2 on just the Jaguar. It's like day 8, 9 or 10 for painting the actual whole painting. And I'm starting to feel a little bit of time pressure now because Amber and I are getting the keys to our first house today, which is so exciting, but also I've now got so much to do in terms of moving and finishing this painting that I'm just pretty stressed at the minute, so fingers crossed I can get a little bit more of this Jaguar done today before we go to pick up the keys to our new house. I've only got about a week to finish the painting, and with the move going on as well, I am under a little bit of time pressure. So wish me luck, and I'm going to get started. When I first started painting animals, and in fact I used to do the thing that I'm going to talk about pretty recently as well, like it's only 2 years ago that my technique has changed, but when I first started out, I was treating it as a very linear, very methodical process. I would start with my darks and then build up to work on my lights. But as I have grown to learn more about painting fur and learn more about different processes and techniques, I've realised it's not exactly a linear process, dark to light. Sometimes you do have to go back in at the end with those darker paints to bring back a little bit more depth to the fur. Adding some darker marks within those lighter marks really gives a sense of volume to the fur. That's one of those things that makes you feel like you could just reach out and touch it. Plus, adding a few of those little strands can actually break up some areas of that lighter fur where it looks all a bit too samey, all a bit the same colour, and it can actually give the impression that you've added way more detail than you actually have. It's just a tiny little thing that I do towards the end of the fur painting process, but it has a huge impact on the final look of the piece. Of course, there's no right or wrong way of painting, and every artist will have different techniques and methods that they use in their painting process. What about you, Amber? Do you have any more tips for painting realistic fur?
Yeah, do actually. Come over here.
Okay.
So my tip is don't throw away your old brushes. I've had this old frayed round brush for years, and it is great for midway through the process where you want to put in that fur texture, but you don't need to be doing every single hair individually. It's great for doing multiple strands all at once. Let me just show you. So I've already used this brush quite a lot in the painting so far, but just so you can see, you can do multiple strands at once with a brush that's frayed like this.
The final tip is sort of pretty simple and straightforward, but it's kind of counterintuitive really, and it's something that I've only just started doing in my paintings and only just starting to understand how to do. And basically, in my older paintings, as strange as it sounds for realism, I was using too much detail. Basically, what I mean by that is I was adding detail where there didn't need to be detail, and actually having less detail in those areas would have made a better and more realistic painting. I don't necessarily want my paintings to look like a photograph. If you do, that is perfectly okay. What I tend to find is photos and using references that are photos, they have lots and lots of detail because a camera can capture more detail than your eyes. But in real life, your eyes don't see every detail. Your brain tells you information about the things that you can see. So for example, with animals, like if you have a dog or a cat, when you're looking at them, you don't see all of the individual hairs that make up their fur. I'm trying to achieve that, but with paintings. I don't want too much detail, but I want there to be enough detail that your brain can interpret the information that you're seeing and then fill in the blanks, so that it tricks you into thinking that I've painted all of those tiny details, even though I haven't. The way that I am trying to do that is by focusing more on the form of the animal that I'm trying to paint. I'm trying to get it to look more 3D and more like it is in real life rather than like a 2D image from a camera. And to do that, I'm focusing on the shadows and highlights and the tonal values, so how light and dark different shades of each colour are. The details are sort of my secondary thoughts. They are just localised in the areas that I want the viewer to pay the most attention to, so for example like the face, and in this painting the paw as well. But for the rest of the painting, so like that paw that's kind of behind the tree and then the rest of the jaguar's back, I don't need as much detail, so I'm not painting in as much detail, I'm not using a smaller brush, and I'm sort of blending everything together a little bit more. Because I don't need there to be detail in there for the viewer's brain to interpret the rest of the information, all of those details in the mid-values, and then extrapolate and trick themselves into seeing details in those lights and in those darks where there actually aren't any. Looking at old paintings and the work of true painting masters, it's a technique that they use and a technique that I hope to master in my own work. I'm still a long way off, but I will get there eventually. Or at least I hope I will. If you've been following along with my videos, you'll know that I've actually created 3 of these big Jaguar pieces, and I'm on a little bit of a tight deadline because we have to go and drive 5 hours, or well, more than 5 hours, probably more close to 7 hours, to drop them off at the collector who's bought them. And 7 hours might not seem like a very long time for those of you in the US, but for us in the UK, or in England specifically, it's like all the way across the country. So it's a long way for me. I have varnished the pictures, so they are all done, and they are just drying off in the studio, and now I've just got to build the frames. Here is one. So I've run out of space in my studio because all the pictures are lying flat and dry in there, and I've had to use my dining room table. While I'm in here, let me just show you some of our Christmas decoration things that me and Amber made. I know it's been a long time since Christmas and they probably shouldn't still be here, but they are. We have this thing of making name cards, and this year I decided to do mini canvases on mini easels with all little Christmas themed paintings. So I took half of them and Amber did half of them. But yeah, I just thought they were pretty cute and a nice little idea and a little bit different. Anyway, enough of that. I need to get back to framing, and I will show you the finished reveal of all 3 framed paintings very soon. This bit of frame has got a tiny little chip in it, so I'm just going to fill that and then paint over it to create a nicer, neater edge. I've just finished framing all the pictures with my dad, and I might be a little bit biased, but they look so good. And the only room in my house that is actually long enough to show you them all together is the kitchen. So the lighting's not the best, but I'm going to show you all 3 of these pictures right now. Here's the first one that I did. How cool does that look in that black frame? And then here's the second one that I did. I chose a wood grain black frame because I thought the wood grain looked a little bit more natural rather than like a matte finish. And then here is the final one and the final reveal of this painting that you've watched in this video. And here they are all together. You can just about see them. How cool do they all look in their matching frames? They all look so good in the collector's house. Let me know which one of the paintings is your favourite, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.